Many students don't feel very familiar with civil service, barring those who are doing public administration as an optional. But there is a way a student can feel confident about civil services. That is, to look at the relationship between the politics and civil service, are now called bureaucracy. First, what is the connection between the two? And how politics impacts bureaucracy. So, whatever the evils, limitations, imperfections, or changes in bureaucracy come from politics. As politics changes, bureaucracy also changes. Theoretically, executive is divided into two: political executive and permanent executive. The larger picture in democracy is that democracy goes by elections. Through elections, political executive come, and elections are periodic, so political executive is temporary. Whereas permanent executive is permanent. What is the role of permanent executive in its relationship with the political executive? This is not only temporary, but also this is not expertise based, not merit based. It is based on elections. So how can those people without any expertise rule or administer the country? So they are supposed to be helped by the permanent executive. So theoretical framework is that permanent executive is to help in policy making and also implement policies. So political executive is the leader, permanent executive is the assistant. Like political executive is represented by minister and permanent executive by secretary. So this is the relationship. And we will see how this relationship is changing, and relationship is changing as part of change in politics and how it is impacting bureaucracy. Okay, we'll take up one question from the previous papers in this context. It's a 2019 question. In modern democratic polity, there is a concept of the political executive and permanent executive. Elected people's representatives form the political executive and bureaucracy form the permanent executive. Ministers frame policy and bureaucrats execute. In the initial decades after independence, the relationship between the permanent executive and the political executive was characterized by mutual understanding and respect and cooperation without encroaching upon each other's domain. So in initial decades, let us note this point. However, in subsequent decades, the situation has changed. There are instances of political executive insisting upon the permanent executive to follow its agenda. Respect for an appreciation of upright bureaucrats has declined. Upright bureaucrats declined. There is an increasing tendency among the political executive to get involved in routine administrative matters, such as transfers, postings. Under this scenario, there is a definitive trend towards politicization of bureaucracy. The rising materialism, I want you to underline like this, and acquisitiveness in social life has adversely impacted upon the ethical values of both permanent and political executive. So what are the consequences of this politicization of bureaucracy? Consequences. Okay, of course, this is about the consequences. We are not addressing just this question. In fact, I am just giving certain issues, explaining certain issues that can be helpful in answering questions like this. I am not exactly answering this question. I am giving certain ideas. So, this is the question. So, in this context, let us look at how politics affects bureaucracy. See, this is my important point. Students feel they know less about bureaucracy. Okay. But once they understand how politics affects bureaucracy, they can be confident they know a lot. Okay. See, bureaucracy is supposed to go by criteria of efficiency, public interest, okay, and non-partisan, objective. But when the politics is getting criminalized and politicians are getting elected on the basis of their connections with the people of muscle power or criminals, then the political executive want to give certain returns to the people who have helped, that is criminals. So what will they do? They don't want administration to be neutral and going by the public interest. They want to help the criminals. So correspondingly, bureaucracy will be changed. An SP or an IG will not have free hand because the criminals will influence the politicians in their appointments as well as in their behavior, in filing of cases and many things. Take politics business connection. To the extent politicians are influenced by business, first of all, why are they influenced? Funds. So businessmen will dictate policies. In recent Adani case. Okay. So this is how they affect. Take for example the society related, casteism and communalism. When the politics is casteist, political executive wants to reward the people of their own caste, which means the administration is not neutral. When the politics is communal, again they want to show their bias towards one community against the another, which means administration again is not neutral. And you can see these are the tendencies: criminalization, funding, connections with business, casteism, communalism, all impacting bureaucracy. Take populism. Okay. Take populism. What is populism? Designing a scheme which is not good in the long run. Okay. Which means administration can no longer do things which it thinks best. So this is how politics affects. Okay. Because administration is essentially operates in the context of politics, and political system essentially operates in the context of society. So a particular society impacts polity, and that polity impacts administration. Administration can't be independent of what is going on around. Okay. So I want you to look at administration in the context of polity, in the context of society, and how administration is changing, is impacted. So I want your answers to show you, to reflect this overall understanding, to reflect this larger picture. Administration is not operating in a vacuum. Okay. Now coming to this specific question of political executive and permanent executive. So the question says permanent executive is to implement the policy, and political executive is formulate. But political executive is impacting and influencing the implementation policies. Okay. The question says that at one time things were fine. In fact, this can be questioned because literature on public administration suggests, for example, Saxena's book on what ails the IAS, you can quote, says that even in initial periods, politicians, particularly at state level, are more interested in implementation and transfers and postings and not planning. So the idea that the things were fine at one time and only recently they became bad can be contested. Okay. But of course, as the political executive, the nature of political executive is changing, the kind of interference also will change. So politicization, criminalization, casteism, communalism will impact the way they interfere in the implementation process. Okay, that is one way of looking at it. But there can be a broader questioning of constitutional framework. Because going by the constitution, what is the role of MPs and MLAs? constitutional role is making laws. Okay. But the point is, does contribution of MPs and MLAs or legislators to lawmaking have any bearing on their electoral chances? So is MP likely to get elected because of his contribution in the parliament to the debates? Is MLA likely to get elected? Absolutely nil. More importantly, who actually makes laws? In fact, few people make outside. Few people belonging to ruling party with the help of bureaucracy make it outside. Okay. And then what happens? They propose legislation. And ruling party support. All ruling party legislators support. And the opposition may not support. And in this process, legislators, they are not thinking individually. Not individually thinking. They are just behaving as party members, and more so after anti-defection bill. So, legislators are not making any independent choices. And anyway, on the whole, these days, role of legislation itself is coming down. Okay, you can say it's decline of parliament, decline of state assembly. Not much is going on in these institutions. No real debates, no real discussions. So, if legislators are confined to policy making, which is what the constitutional framework is, they indeed have very little work. Okay. They don't have much work if they are confined to only lawmaking. So, and it is not helpful for their electoral chances. So, what are they interested in? They are interested in developmental work. Developmental work for all in their constituencies. In their constituencies. Positive work. And then for their own people, loans, contracts, schemes. Okay. Or an industry in their area. So, which means they are interested in the development of their constituency. They are not interested in the legislation process. First of all, they don't have any much role. And so they want to deliver goods to the people of their constituencies. It means they are more interested in implementation, because it is the implementation of the policies that impact their electoral chances, and the reason why they stood for elections or for their entire political career. But unfortunately, in the light of constitutional scheme, the legitimate interests of legislators will be considered interference. Okay. So, and this is supposed to be a bad thing. And of course, they are interfering in such a way that help them, which means administration may not be neutral. Okay. So, the constitutional framework itself is not conducive to the dichotomy between policy formulation and policy implementation. Sorry, that is the constitutional framework that is not conducive to the reality. So, constitutional scheme is not matching reality. Is not matching reality. Okay. So, does it mean we should change the constitution? Not really. The problem with political arrangement is that excessive centralization. Okay. How is it an excessive centralization? See, look at, you have Prime Minister and few cabinet ministers. That's all. How about other MPs? So many MPs, hundreds of them. There is no role. Chief Minister and some few ministers. How about hundreds of MLAs? No role. Okay. So, what can rectify this situation is Panchayat Raj, 3-tier of government. Okay. Suppose 3-tier of government, Panchayat Raj, in area is empowered in a way, something like, say, ZP chairman. Okay, he is made subordinate to collector, which never happened. Okay, but something closer to it was once tried in Karnataka. So ZP chairman is the superior, like chief minister at the district level, and collector is subordinated, and ZP chairman will have some council members, which means a kind of a cabinet. So these politicians then will have power at the district level. It means around 10 politicians are occupied at the district level. And what it means is that a powerful politician would like to be a Jilla Parishad chairman rather than an MLA who doesn't have any role, unless he can be a minister. Even an MP may want to be a Jilla Parishad chairman unless he is going to be a central minister. So, this kind of a thing within a state can produce different districts, governments, D1, D2, D3, Jilla Parishad chairman and council members. Like diverse states emerged, diverse states with different political parties emerged. So such diverse districts will emerge. Then the politicians will have work, and they can do their work in a legitimate way. Their work would not be called interference in implementation. After all, it is they who are ruled, who are elected to rule, and the civil services is supposed to help them. So, the present kind of system, PM, CM, DM, the present system is called PM, CM, DM. Okay. DM is important because he works as per the command of the CM. So, to the extent that DM, district magistrate, is more powerful, Panchayat Raj is down. So, if politicians are not confining to policy formulation, you can see the reason is excessive centralization. Excessive centralization. Okay. So, my point in the now coming to the examination is that think of the political picture. Okay. And then think of bureaucracy. You will have many more things to say if you do this. Thank you.